All right, welcome to America This Week on Monday, live. I'm Matt Taibbi.
And I'm
Hey,
Walter
Walter.
Kern. Hey
How's
there.
it going?
Oh, it's great. I just got done urinating off the back porch, as is my privilege as a landowner in Montana.
For now.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a cup of coffee. I have ridden the Jimmy Kimmel train to
Oh my
its
God.
final destination where I get off, whether or not they get off or not. I've now spent far too much brain power on the whole damn thing. After making my ringing statement on the whole issue last week, I see they've reinstated him, which actually is great. I mean, we wouldn't have had to go through this whole damn thing. And now I feel that the Disney Corporation has played me in one of the greatest publicity stunts of all time.
So 400 celebrities in an ACLU exercise signed a petition to defend free speech, to stand up for Jimmy Kimmel. And Walter, I'm not sure, maybe later in the show, I might want to individually tell each one of these people to fuck off.
Celebrities hardest hit in any assassination these days.
All of you, fucking Kevin Bacon, Kirsten Dunst, Gina Gershon, Robert De Niro, Rob Morrow, like
the ACLU, by the way, was freaking AWOL for years.
Exactly.
Now. And here they come back with their celebrity connection. Oh, let's just take one at random. I'll look at one, because I can tell you that whenever a celebrity list is being made up in Hollywood, the phone calls between lawyers, agents, publicists, and managers are, basically burning up the line. So probably, let's see, somebody like, because there's a lot of people we've never heard of here.
Harvey Keitel on there, Wallace Shawn's on there, Kamau Bell is on there. You know what? Shame on all of you motherfuckers. I know some of you people. Where were you when we needed you? Like this is exactly the same issue.
But Matt, does this smack of organic uprising among the Hollywood elite, or does it smack of absolutely orchestrated, prearranged, scripted BS as to establish themselves as exactly what they haven't been for years and still aren't and will never be? Not this group, at least.
It's just incredible. So just so people know, Disney has released a statement saying that Jimmy Kimmel Live will return on Tuesday. And the statement.
I wonder how much ads cost for the reinstatement.
Oh my God, yeah. The statement reads as follows: Last Wednesday, we made the decision to suspend production on the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. It is a decision we made because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive, according to a statement from Disney. We have spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday. And then, yeah,
dude, I want to live stream it. They don't allow that because it's copyrighted material, and we couldn't sit there making comments. But it would be so fun to do it.
I mean, it would be hilarious. I mean,
isn't it a public event now? I mean, haven't they raised it to almost the status of a meeting of the U.S. Congress? Shouldn't we be allowed as citizens to do live commentary on it?
I don't know. Words cannot even express how fucking angry I am about this. But let's back up and talk about why this is so infuriating, because the issue with this is that, okay, first of all, the ACLU kicks into high gear over Jimmy Kimmel being, let's face it, an asshole, right? Like, it's okay. It's still, it's constitutional speech. It's legal speech. We defend it, right? But just to be clear, he's being a dick and he was being wrong, right? The ACLU charges into action over a legal issue that is identical to the one that you and I have been harping on for years, identical to the one that came out of the Twitter files, identical to the one that was in the Missouri, the Murphy v. Missouri case, the one that put Jay Bhattacharya on the map, identical to the one involving journalist Alex Berenson, who has a much more compelling jawboning case than Jimmy Kimmel, and has had a suit that has gone through the courts that has gotten absolutely no coverage from any of these people. Nobody's paid attention to it. It's like an ultimate case of government jawboning and censorship. Nothing, not a peep from any of these people. And now all of a sudden,
we're talking about Supreme Court cases that could affect law, not, some, in so far at least, brouhaha between the FCC, maybe. It's unclear to me now. I mean, I look at the story and I'm not even sure what material effect the FCC statement had, because it appears that the affiliates decided to get, rid of the show before that guy spoke.
Well, yes. I mean, who knows what they said privately? Who knows? Either way,
you think that if they'd said something privately, we wouldn't have heard it by now from this self-righteous crowd?
Well, I mean, look, we had former Disney CEO Michael Eisner saying something about intimidation, but he, he's just speaking generically about out of control intimidation. No, we haven't heard anything like that.
You know what was happening, Matt?
What
I was noticing, I don't know. See, once again, we can't speculate on the worldwide Disney Corporation's decision to now reinstate any more than I think we can understand their decision to take him off, honestly, at this point. But they were getting people like Mamdani saying he wasn't going to go on an ABC affiliate in New York. They were getting, they had somebody shoot at an ABC affiliate, I believe in Sacramento, at the window. They had gotten themselves in the crosshairs of their own most zealous fans, I guess.
Well, right.
Constituency. Yeah. Now that's tough for a corporation.
It is, and you predicted that. You said that they've now gotten themselves in essentially in a jackpot with the mob they created.
Yeah.
Right. And look, that blowback was going to happen. But just to be clear, what Brendan Carr did was, it's jawboning, right? Like it would be a different thing if they had
far more than you would and I would have gotten if YouTube decided to cancel us.
Well, right. Yeah. No, nobody would say a thing. I mean, almost everybody we know is being suppressed somewhere by a private third party.
And nobody has the honesty to come out in public and tell us about it first. They just do it. You just turn it on one day and you found out you got a strike or whatever it was. They're not running you. I remember when when used a piece of Saturday Night Live when Saturday Night Live decided to only run one presidential candidate like 2 days before the election.
Right.
And we thought that was of public interest and wanted to comment on what she said, but apparently that was material that we weren't allowed to have.
Well, I mean, beyond that, I mean, just think of the awesome range of things that are taken off YouTube and places like that.
Is the ACLU party to any of the lawsuits you just mentioned?
It wasn't part of Murphy v. Missouri. No, definitely not. And it's not part of the Berenson suit. Not that I know of. But
when Harvey Keitel is involved, they swing into action. They got the bat signal.
Right, exactly. And look, we'll get into all of it.
It's going to be a big fundraiser and big gala dinner in Beverly Hills for the ACLU this year, I predict.
But the thing that people have to, you and I had a discussion last week, Walter, where we were a little bit at odds about the idea of the FCC, taking action, right?
Yeah.
Now, there is a route in a regulatory fashion that allows them to go in and formally make decisions if there is a complaint of so-called news distortion. They can do that because it's the public airwaves. There is a public interest standard that has never been invoked in this way, but still they could claim it. And we argued about whether that would be bad if they did that, right? Like, and
it's never been invoked, but whether it's been considered behind the scenes, we have no idea.
Well, there have been complaints. There have been efforts by people to try to, like, even the famous Hunger in America. Remember the Charles Kuralt thing in the late 60s about hunger in America? There was a complaint by a Texas congressman that it was prejudicial, and they tried to get that taken off of CBS and argue news distortion.
There was a threat by Chuck Schumer against Tucker Carlson, and soon he was gone.
Well, yes, right.
But not through the FCC.
Not through the FCC. So if the FCC had done this, if the FCC had gone to ABC and said, you know, we, the FCC, are bringing a news distortion case against you. We've stacked the deck of commissioners. We're going to win this case. You guys are fucked. And they go and they take regulatory action against somebody for constitutional speech. Well, we would argue about that. Like, I would say I don't like that. Like, I'm strongly against that. You might say that
I might have too if it had gone to that length. But the irony for me last week was that with the FCC involved and with a broadcast channel and with my, kind of instinctive skepticism about giant corporate moves, I thought, wow, this is the one case and the one situation in which I would put an asterisk next to my so far absolutism on free speech, because it does involve the one media that has a licensed and contractual obligation to fulfill. And it involves the regulatory agency, which quite publicly announced its concern. In other words, I actually preferred that people didn't like the optics, and maybe it wasn't good politically, but I would rather someone come out and say something than has happened in these these social media cases. It all be done sub rosa, not admitted to, and through infiltrated, employees at Twitter and weird lawyers and stuff.
Right. And so they never got to the FCC decision. The bad act was Brendan Carr getting up and talking to Benny Johnson and saying, this can either go easy or hard. We have a case. This is the sickest behavior. You guys are in trouble. Blah blah blah. And that's clearly this sort of jawboning idea. It's this idea of sort of leaning the government, threatening regulatory action. Well,
obviously it wasn't that scary because
they just brought it back on.
They just brought him back.
Yeah. So, okay. So the reason that's bad, and we've been talking about this, not just in the context of the United States, not just in the context of the Twitter files or the Berenson case, or, going back to COVID, the platforms being dragged onto the Hill to be yelled at about Russian interference, demanding that they come up with a plan for to stop the foment of discord. But also the European laws also use the same technique of government leaning on a third party, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not the government doing the censorship. It's a government that demands that the private platform do the censoring in line with government recommendations, right?
And again, that was my point. In the one domain where they actually have a statutory right and duty, and if they really feel that the contract is being abused, they act it. But what we've seen before is that in all the areas where they have none, they have tried to assert one using all these weird concepts like cognitive infrastructure and so on.
Right. Over things that that have nothing to do with government or media. Like, we're just talking about speech between individuals, you know?
Right.
And this is why everybody, people roll their eyes. Remember when Malcolm Gladwell rolled his eyes about the Hunter Biden laptop story? The reason that story was a big story was because ultimately it traces back to the FBI giving a warning to an internet platform, and them taking such extreme action that people couldn't even DM the story to each other. They used the highest level of barricade possible in the company. Like, this is what they use for child porn, right? To prevent spread of that story. It wasn't because that story is a big deal. It was the mechanics of it that were the problem.
Imagine if the Trump administration somehow funded all of these pseudo academic centers for the study of disinformation and misinformation, which came up with all these esoteric rationales and then all these technical ways to get in there to the platforms and all this data and so on. But they did it in the name of God.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We're invoking a higher power to stop disinformation. Blah blah blah. Right. People would go absolutely. I mean, they're going batshit over this. Imagine if the other thing had happened. Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to imagine it. So this thing.
And I also know what's going to happen, by the way. I'm so weary of this. It's a publicity stunt in my mind, officially now. Okay. And I know exactly what's going to happen. Jimmy's going to come out like he's fucking, he's going to
not
like Lenny Bruce,
yeah.
And stick it in the eye, and we'll have a big brouhaha, and the ratings will go up, and the ACLU will now have a big celebrity fundraiser, and they will further obliterate the actual news that has occurred. I mean, yesterday, Charlie Kirk had at his funeral, which required in probably at least half the cases, plane tickets, not just lining up outside a studio. And they got more people than he gets in the demographic,
right,
to watch his damn network show.
Yeah. So right. The funeral outdraws personally Jimmy Kimmel, but the way they're going to remake him as a cross of Lenny Bruce and George Carlin, it's already so infuriating. I can feel his anxiety right now.
But unlike Lenny Bruce, everything he says will be absolutely aligned with the military industrial complex,
exactly.
The pharmaceutical industry, the Democratic Party, the various NGOs, which maybe have been starved a little, the WEF and so on. The little guy making $20 million, not Lenny Bruce, friggin' jonesing for heroin in a nightclub in San Francisco and going home to his dive hotel room.
Yeah, I mean, people who really are victims of these ongoing speech suppression controversies, they tend to end badly. Like, if you go back and look, they're like almost
suicide.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a happy thing. If you go back and look at the Lenny Bruces of the world, it's a whole bunch of miserable stories, and that's not going to happen with any of these folks. That does not mean that what happened with the FCC last week was right. Like, it was wrong, and they even got Republican officials like Ted Cruz. Let's watch Ted Cruz first, because this is both weird, and then the response to it was weird. Like the Wall Street Journal called this Ted Cruz's finest hour. So let's see Ted Cruz on this.
No. Look, I like Brendan Carr. He's a good guy. He's the chairman of the FCC. I work closely with him. But
Right.
what he said there is dangerous as hell. And I got to say, he threatens it. He says, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way.
Yeah.
And I got to say, that's right out of Goodfellas. That's right out of a mafioso coming into a bar going, nice bar you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. And I got to say, look, I understand. Jimmy Kimmel has mocked me so many times I cannot count.
Ted's
The
theater
corporate
kid is
media,
coming
they're
out all over
dishonest,
the
they are
place, isn't it?
liars. I hate what Jimmy Kimmel said. But let me tell you, if the government gets in the business of saying,
What you
we
can and
don't
can't
like
say.
what you, the media, have said, we're going to ban you from the airwaves if you
didn't
don't
say
say
that.
what we like. That will end up bad for conservatives. It reminds me of, you and I are both fans of The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
J.R.R. Tolkien. It reminds me of like the Ring of Power. And it is so attractive. It's sort of like conservatives are saying, wait, if we have government, we have power.
Yeah.
We can ban the media. Let me tell you what will happen. Going down this road, there will come a time when a Democrat wins again. Wins the White House.
They will
and
get
the
rid of
next
every
Democrat
talk show host in
FCC,
America that's a conservative. They'll
They've
get rid of
already
every
done it.
podcast. They'll get rid of
they
everybody
will
on YouTube.
silence us. They will use this power,
Okay.
and they will use it
Dude,
ruthlessly.
You've got Greg Gutfeld. That's all they have to silence. Okay, that's it. You got like 1 out of 4, and if you count the secondary network talk show hosts, 1 out of like 6 or 7. You don't have a long way to fall. Well, here's
I mean, he's right. Cruz is right, and I think he's also right about it being bad for conservatives. You know,
I don't give a damn what's good for conservatives or bad for.
I don't even. Yeah, I don't really either.
My question is this: whether or not this was this extraordinary break in protocol, some all-time, threat, or it was actually a fairly mild use at a time of crisis. I mean, I know that, like, I'm sorry, but evangelical Christians only count in elite worlds for like 1/4 a person. But no, really, honestly, I mean, don't they have their own shows? Shouldn't they be in church?
700 Club. Or
yeah. What happened to? Can't they watch PTL? But the fact is, that this guy, I think, reminded people that it cuts both ways, in not that hysterical or threatening a fashion as Ted makes it out to be. But that was my point, and he did it in the one, like I say, in the one domain where there is actually federal oversight. Just because it's never ever used, and just because to even mention that it exists is apparently verboten. But I just want to remind everybody that you live in a country where people are being assassinated.
Well, yes,
there's
that too, and
like,
we're going to get to that because there's been a bunch of other incidents, right? I mean,
yeah,
we've had a number of more crazy things happen in the interim since we last did a show. So,
but
yes,
instead we've got the Dreyfus case.
Well, no, look, go ahead.
And Matt, I'm sorry, I don't buy for 5 freaking seconds that the reinstatement is any more authentic than the firing. I see a good old, pro wrestling trope. He was down, but he's back.
I know. Yeah,
well, look, he's coming in over the ring. He fell into the seats, but now he's got one of the chairs and he's coming over the ropes. This is the Disney Corporation. They specialize in this.
You know what? If I'll take it. If Jimmy Kimmel becomes the heel
I wish they'd spared us this whole bullshit by never firing him. I'm going to be a professed libertarian now on this issue. They should have let the market speak purely, and now it's going to speak again for a brief time with an incredible, probably fusillade of praise and attention
Oh,
and
and
maybe even
critical acclaim.
ratings. Yeah, and Emmys and I
Movie
mean,
deals.
yeah, and everybody has a share.
Right, and everybody has
the
a share.
ACLU.
The ACLU, the fucking ACLU. I'm so mad about this. Right. So a couple of things about that Cruz bit. First of all, his accents were a little weird when he was trying to figure out which movie he was invoking.
Yeah.
But Walter, you and I, we remember I was at the Court of Appeals case in New Orleans where 3 federal judges said the FBI, the White House, the DHS, all these different government agencies had done the exact same thing. They said, nice internet platform you got there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. There was one judge in New Orleans who made that exact same comparison 3 times. And that was when they did the emergency injunction to prevent any of these government agencies from contacting the internet companies. That's what was overturned, or actually it wasn't overturned. It was sent back to the lower courts in the Supreme Court case. But they made exactly the same case because it's exactly the same thing. But it was even bigger in scale and organization previously. And
none of those companies had gotten a private lease from the federal government that automatically guarantees them zillions of dollars in return for some minor, never enforced obligation.
Right, exactly. And they were already getting so many other little gifts, but we'll get to that in a moment. So when this happened, one of the things I said online was, look, at this moment, you have this situation where it looks like there are 2 kind of anti-speech paradigms that are bearing down on us, and that's bad. And we have to kind of hope that there are the few elected officials who do have a genuine pro-speech posture speak up. And people said, well, who's that? Well, the one person I can think of is Rand Paul, right? And he was terrific on this. Now let's listen first to the thing that he said that was most circulated about the FCC case. I think this is SOT 1.
Senator, do you believe that Brendan Carr's comments were appropriate?
Absolutely inappropriate. Brendan Carr has got no business weighing in on this. But people have to also realize that despicable comments, you have the right to say them, but you don't have the right to employment. Virtually everybody employed, probably including yourself, has a code of conduct in your contract that you have to adhere to. NFL players have it. Major League Baseball players have it. And if you don't adhere to that conduct, if you say things that are reprehensible or that glorify someone's death or make fun of it in some way, yeah, you can be fired. So the FCC should have nothing to do with it. But I do think that, a couple of the networks pulled out. Sinclair pulled out. They were disgusted about the comments. That's their right. You can be fired for not being popular also. I mean, this is television, for goodness sakes. You have to sell sponsorships. You have to sell commercials. And if you're losing money, you can be fired. But the government's got no business in it. And the FCC was wrong to weigh in. And I'll fight any attempt by the government to get involved with speech. I will fight.
Okay. So,
well, why don't you just cancel the FCC? I know. I've got an idea, Rand. Sorry. But you've left in place these clauses, these, agreements. Let's get rid of them. Can they ever be used? Because I'm going to tell you what, they're going to be tested now.
Well,
that's the drama that's coming.
If you go back and you look at all of the FCC decisions about this news distortion issue, what the cases say over and over again, what the commissioners say over and over again, is that they do not want to supplant what they call the journalistic function of the lessees, right? So they don't want to come up and say, we're deciding what's true. that's your job, right? And so that comes up over and over and over again in these news distortion cases.
Matt, the news distortion has happened on the news. Let's get
Right.
real.
Yeah.
I mean, what's interesting is that the news divisions have apparently not been very concerned about their distortions, which I got to say have come with absolute collusion with sources and party types, and started a while ago, but certainly reached a peak in Russiagate. And yet that didn't get policed. The news distorting the news. I feel like these guys have gotten away with murder.
Well, they have, and that's because it's because in the American system there is this hole in the American system. Like, if you're not libeling a person on the news, it's pretty hard to be punished. Like,
but that is the American system. But also part of the American system is Franklin Delano Roosevelt's, the closest we've had to a almost quasi-authoritarian president of 4 terms, more to the left than any other in this establishment of various public rights and commons and so on, who made this contract.
No, absolutely. And they made it for a reason. They knew it was going to be incredibly valuable. And the FCC, look,
and FDR hated his critics, hated his media critics, and behind the scenes did all kinds of things to them.
And probably could have used this body to shut them down. Didn't, though. And the legacy of the FCC since then has really been more about protecting this industry than policing it. There have been a few things where they've gone in and changed behavior, or truth in advertising standards is one thing that they've done. But they spend a lot of time doing things like, going after pirate radio stations and stuff like that. Like, it's not a regulatory authority that anybody.
Pirate radio stations I could get behind. But that is exactly it, Matt. You know why they did that? Because they were protecting the commercial interests of their licensees.
Exactly.
They go around. Did you know that in this country, the government guarantees certain districts to soft drink bottlers and gives them the ability to control prices at a federal level within those? In other words, Coca-Cola has drawn all these districts, and then they award bottling licenses. And the federal government guarantees that somebody can't go across that border, buy a bunch of Coke at Costco for cheaper than it is sold in that district. I had a Coca-Cola executive explain this to me, and bring it back. That's the government guaranteeing commercial fiefdoms. And they've done a really good job of policing the fiefdoms of the networks and of radio stations and so on. But they forgot about this other side. Oh, well.
Yep. Yeah. No, they haven't done right. It's an elaborate subsidy system, and a lot of it just evolves in the direction of we're going to help the powerful interests and squeeze out the smaller guys, and that's where we're going to drop the hammer on those when they get out of line.
I'm sorry to be this guy, but the news made claims that it took straight from its advertisers about the COVID vaccine and straight from certain politicians. They were wrong. There was no evidence for them. They said over and over that this thing would stop the spread and so on. Well, that was distortion. And they had no evidence for it. And did they pay a single fucking dollar for that? They actually got a lot of medicine into children in this country in ways that parents, had they been more accurate, might have thought better of. Oh, Jimmy Kimmel. Here's how I feel. And here's how I feel after talking about free speech for years and in the weeds about it, on behalf of sometimes women in Indiana who have 300 followers and got kicked off Twitter. I feel like I built a house, and then all of a sudden a Hollywood film crew came in and said, "Hey, can you stand aside?"
Yeah, it's like State
and
Maine.
they nailed a little eagle over the door and then said, "How do you like our house?"
Right. It's incredibly frustrating. The and this isn't just being like petty and saying, "Oh, nobody." It proves the insincerity of this moment, right? And you were just talking about the people taking messaging straight from their advertisers and being wrong about it. That's at the core of the Berenson case, by the way.
Yes.
Berenson was a reporter who got squashed by a White House official for telling the truth. And he's another person who kind of like lost his job, right? And suffered, right, for doing the right thing. And that's not the person who gets all the 400 celebrity letters and the ACLU's attention.
A lot of those celebrities have been drunk for 2 weeks on a sailboat somewhere and don't know that their name is on a letter. I promise you.
So frustrating. So I just want to I want to play the second part. So Rand Paul got that quote about how it's unacceptable, and I will fight it and everything. Big news stories all over the place. Everybody saying Republican senator goes after Trump, which is great. It's fine. That's all good. This section did not get as much play.
I want to play something that President Trump promised during his inaugural address, followed by comments that he made just this week. Take a look.
I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America.
When somebody is given 97% of the stories are bad about a person, that's no longer free speech. That's no longer, that's just cheating.
Senator, do you believe that President Trump is sending the message that he only supports free speech when it's speech that he agrees with?
Well, this is why it's kind of rich for Governor Shapiro also to come on and be outraged by censorship. Was he asleep for the 4 years of the Biden administration when they did have censorship? The FBI, Department of Homeland Security were sent to the offices of Twitter. They were sent to the offices of Facebook. Facebook was told to take down information concerning the origins of the COVID virus, or they were being threatened with remove their liability protection or being threatened with being broken up by antitrust.
But just to focus on what you are seeing right now from the president himself, do you think he's doing that? Is he protecting free speech?
Well, actually, it has occurred all throughout government. The Department of Homeland Security is no longer sending officers to Twitter to talk to them about taking.
But what about what President Trump is saying?
The FBI is well, I can't control everything the president says, and I don't think that having the FCC weigh in on licenses is right. I will fight that, but I can tell you that throughout government, the censorship apparatus that Biden had put in place is gone.
So
yeah, but what do we care about that? What do we care about Matt Taibbi being told that he's a freaking stooge of Putin and the Twitter files aren't real?
And a conspiracy theorist by the FBI. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Matt, okay. Walter, as a thinker, I want people to hear us talk about the things they're hearing about. But as a thinker, I have rocketed out of this atmosphere to another level because I feel like I'm staring into the past when I see the letters NBC. I feel like I'm staring into the past when I see the letters ABC and Jimmy Kimmel and all of this, because in some ways, not only is this their last stand, but it is how can I say this? It is a phenomena like a light from a dead star. It takes a long time for the light to reach us from a star that has already exploded far away in the universe. And I feel like that. And what I am increasingly interested in is what's going to happen to our damn society when the fear of one group is that they'll lose their $20 million job. And the fear of the other group is that they'll get shot. because whether that fits with the debate, with the debate parameters, I don't know. But there is no censorship more complete, more terrifying, and more final than violence. And that's what I'm seeing happen in our country. I mean, I really do know that people who feel themselves to be controversial right now are hiring guards, are canceling or thinking about canceling appearances. And I got drawn into this freaking sideshow by the Disney Corporation, which wasn't ever really going to cancel the guy in the first place, it looks like.
Well, no, that's interesting. Do you think they were?
No, I don't think they ever really were sincere. I think the proof is in the pudding. By their fruits you shall know them. I don't think they had some giant paroxysm of conscience over the weekend. No, I really do feel like I've been part of a publicity stunt.
Well, look, again, if Jimmy Kimmel turns out to be the mechanism by which the First Amendment survives a little longer, I'm okay with that.
I think it's been the mechanism by which their hypocrisy has been exposed.
Well, that for sure. But if it's the other thing as well, I'll take it. But just before we move on to the threats and the violence, because there were some amazing stories in the last week. I just want to make sure that people heard the thing that Rand Paul was saying there. It isn't just that there was jawboning going on. It wasn't just that there were people from the White House calling Twitter and saying, "Hey, we would like you to dial down that Tucker Carlson video or this meme about comparing somebody to mesothelioma, like to a late night cancer ad or whatever it is." There were bureaucracies. There were censorship bureaucracies that were in existence that had to be uncovered, that we tried to report on. We got no help from any of these people. We're talking about like the Global Engagement Center, right, in the State Department, the Foreign Influence Task Force at the FBI, that has employees sitting there just looking at people on the internet talking. Like, we have government employees who were doing that for a living, policing speech. And this was spreading to all these different agencies in the government. And when he talks about the censorship mechanism, I'm not sure that he's right that it's all gone already. But the fact that it existed and got no coverage for many of these people, and none of those celebrities gave a shit that this whole thing was being built in front of their eyes. Not just the occasional politician saying, "Hey," because Joe Biden did something similar. He said, "Hey, you're killing people, Twitter, when you air this stuff, or Facebook when you allow these things to circulate." It wasn't quite the same as the Brendan Carr stuff, but it was in that direction, right? But it was far beyond that. They were actually going through and building up bureaucratic capability to deal with speech on a grand scale, as a policy idea. Mm-hmm.
Can I tell a very specific story? I don't know if I've told this on the show before, and frankly, it takes a little courage to tell it. I one day was on Twitter, and I was in a snit about the fact that MSNBC and the other cable news were hiring all these former intelligence chiefs and putting the reporter and commentary cap on them. It really bothered me. And I just said something. I made a tweet, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Within about a minute or a couple of minutes of making that tweet, I lost control of my Twitter. I could see that someone had control of it, but I couldn't affect it. And I saw them to delete the tweet. They deleted that, and I believe another one. In front of my eyes, I tried to do the two-factor authentication and get back into my account, but I couldn't get back into it. Because under the asterisks, which cover your email address.
Oh, we lost you, or did we lose Walter? Walter, you're muted, bud. All right. While he figures this out, there you go.
No, okay. That was not intervention by the state. That was me just moving my hand in the wrong way. In any case, so I lost control of it. I couldn't use the two-factor authentication. It was a very sophisticated hijacking of my account, one that I wouldn't have believed was possible. Okay, so how did I get my account back? Well, I had people I knew say, bring back Walter, you know. But here's what I really had to do. I had to pay money, a bit of a sum, to a private contractor whose security firm advertises them as a former intelligence person, who then contacted somebody inside Twitter who they used to work with in their intelligence career, who then silently got on the phone and restored my account for me for money. That's what used to work. Okay, let's get real. Here's part of my unconfessed point of view on all this. I've been a target for this, and nobody gave a damn. In a very specific way, I was a target in this case, and I had to pay money. And I had to pay money to the guys, to the boys, Ted Cruz, it'd be a shame if anything happened to that Twitter account, people, literally, to the insiders. Okay? That's the world that we lived in. Sorry, Jimmy.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. Nobody paid any attention, and they didn't pay attention to. So let's think about just take an example. Jordan Chariton's Status Coup, right? It's like a little lefty, not a little lefty site. It's a pretty well known lefty site. One of his videographers got the famous footage on J6 when somebody tried to reach a hand through a door. Remember that? And there was like a scrum. And the crowd almost broke through the door. It was circulated everywhere. He got that footage, sold it to all the big networks, all the big newspapers. Then they censored that footage. He wasn't allowed to use his own footage, but the big networks were allowed to use his own footage. And this is something that has happened repeatedly. Like a guy who works for our site, Ford Fisher, or who contributes, happened to him. Like he'll shoot something for PBS that will involve like some white supremacist figure, and it can go on PBS, but he can't go on his site. And that's not just censorship; it's government protecting industry. It's all kinds of bad things. Nobody cared. Nobody fought for those people, right? And there's hundreds, thousands of people like that, right? Who had these issues. We wrote about them for years, and nobody cares. A lot of them weren't being assholes or wrong, right? They were people like Alex Berenson who were trying to do a good job and couldn't get through this increasingly powerful bureaucracy. And somebody brought up the Scary Poppins thing with Nina Jankowicz. We forgot about that whole thing, the Disinformation Governance Board they tried to institute. Nobody said a peep about that having, on the mainstream media side. They didn't say boo about it. Now all of a sudden Jimmy Kimmel, who's a spiraling, plummeting late night comic who's going to be fired anyway, gets to be a free speech icon after being reinstored by Disney for being wrong, consistently and dehumanizing and all kinds of other things.
Dude, would you allow Radio Rwanda under this free speech thing?
Well, no. I mean, I think Radio Rwanda would fall into the category of incitement, right? So
at what point would it cross?
It's tough, right? Because they speak in what point language.
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying if somebody comes to your hospital unvaccinated without, and they're having a heart attack, let them die. Okay. How many steps from Radio Rwanda is that?
I mean, it's a few, but yeah.
Is it? Is it in a time when people were being debanked, when people were being
well, I mean, that's another thing. We can't forget about that too, right? The debanking thing is a huge thing, right? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Where were all the people on this list? Were they flowing? I bet a lot of them are Canadian, knowing how Hollywood's made up, and especially comedy.
Oh yeah, we can probably go through that list.
Were they all up there in Toronto with those truck drivers?
Yeah, when Chrystia Freeland was up there, invoking what is it, the Emergency Whatever Act? I forget what act it was, to seize the GoFundMe and Give Send Go monies sent to Canadian truckers. Did anybody? I don't remember any celebrities giving a shit about that. It's just it's infuriating, and look, I see people in the comments. What are you talking about? Choking on my own hypocrisy? I've been consistent about this.
Matt,
the FCC.
Hey, direct that at me, and I don't call it hypocrisy. Actually, I call it consistency of the kind that Ben Franklin, consistency that seems to be inconsistent, because I thought about my principles in terms of a special case, and I realized that they directed me to an unpopular stand on this case, because actually my stand, as far as I'm concerned, is that favoring this corporate speech, which doesn't have any real guardrails about it, which can be wrong day in and day out through a pandemic in favor of its own advertisers, which can be wrong about national security issues, war and peace, using no journalistic standards to pipeline government propaganda into your head. I sort of thought waking them up for a moment to the fact that they have responsibilities wasn't a bad thing. That's the way I extrapolated my principles. Matt did it differently, and that's cool. But I'm so worked up because the inciting incident in this drama was the murder of someone. Okay. And the murder of someone who, whether you like him or don't like him, his act, and let's call it that, even though it might have been a very sincere one, but just for purposes of description, Jimmy Kimmel has his act. Well, Charlie Kirk's act was to take all comers, to take people in open mic situations in front of live crowds and debate them. He certainly saw himself as a free speech advocate, even if his critics didn't. Then he got murdered. And frankly, the people who were most happy about that murder, I mean, that's evident. They certainly didn't cry about it. Put on the skin suit of his chief principal, like Buffalo Bill, frankly, in Silence of the Lambs. They unzipped his skin and put it over themselves. And I'll tell you, I've written a book about a psychopathic murderer. This is very common. This is the psychology of a very sick kind of criminal mind, in which they kill. And Freud agreed. Go read him. Totem and Taboo is the name of the book. In order to appropriate the power of someone, you kill them, and then you take their spirit. You take their act, as it were. And that's kind of at a primal Freudian and level, because I'm not just a news person. I'm also a writer and a thinker. That's what I see happening, and it revolts me.
It is, right? I mean, that Ed Gein, Buffalo Bill,
yeah,
big old fat girl thing, right? That was it is gross. Like they're cloaking themselves in the garb of the victim, and it is gross. I mean, it's grotesque
without even a decent interval.
and there are
And
a
they're
lot of
entertainers, America, you should realize that having your theme parks and your news and your entertainment all in the same bucket might not have been the most wonderful decision. Nothing you can do about it except as a consumer. But I don't know. If I wrote about it in a novel, if Kurt Vonnegut said, "Oh, the theme park company just bought the news, and then they sold it to the pharmaceutical company," you might wonder if you were in that healthy a situation, even if it was all perfectly legal.
Yeah, and also the attitude, the shift in tone after Kirk got shot from, well, I didn't like what he stood for, but we must condemn all political violence, to, well, he kind of deserved it, and here's why, right? Like there was just a lot of
In
that.
many cases, I'm happy. He not only deserved it, but he deserved it a lot earlier. And this bullet speaks for all of us. A lot of what you see on social media is provocation and comes from bot farms and troll farms and foreign interests and all sorts of things. And getting too worked up about it is ridiculous, because that's what they want you to do. That's the industry. But it also rose pretty high in our power structure, both commercially and politically, this sentiment. And the whole thing, like I say, I mean, Charlie Kirk's idea of free speech, which, was public debate, is now completely eclipsed by the Disney Corporation's idea of free speech and NBC's and so on. And all the people who've been running all the frickin' interference for the same people for years and years. Now they get to be the Grateful Dead or something. I mean, now they're Jim Morrison getting thrown off stage for, showing his genitals or something. I mean, oh my God, the need to always be the fake.
Yeah,
rebel.
no, it's going to be the People versus Larry Flint or whatever it is. And what's so funny about that, Milos Forman, great director, right? Great movie. I do like that movie. I think it's a great legal movie. I think what's his name, the guy who plays the lawyer, anyway, we'll get back to it. Either way, though, that moment in history where liberals thought, you know what, I'll stand up even for the disgusting pornographer who makes an absolutely obscene joke about somebody's mother, and because that's what speech is. We defend even the most vile shit, right? That's the whole idea. That was the whole premise of that film. But we didn't do it when it was, Brazil demanding that Elon Musk and X censor this or that, or Europe demanding that Telegram adhere by its dictates. They decided.
Can I tell you something, Matt? Not only didn't we do it, your litany, and I think we've repeated the litany, is all accurate and moving and substantial, but they're not going to do it in the future either. Okay, this isn't a change of heart. This is not going to affect their sudden support for the future analogs of those past cases. This is a complete way out, a showbiz way out of actually doing a damn thing. Oh, but you know what they may come up with as their next stand? The right of pharmaceutical companies to advertise on television.
Well, okay, there's that. And, well, this leads into this question by Rick Raguso here. What about Carr's right to free speech? So here's the thing, and I'll have an article on Racket tomorrow about this, interviewing a pretty interesting person who has his own free speech imbroglio. But there is a problem that's baked into this whole issue, which is that it's fundamentally basically impossible to deliver damages to somebody for having their constitutional rights violated by a private actor. So that's this exact situation that just happened with Jimmy Kimmel, when government leans on a private actor and the private actor fires the person. There's almost no way to reward that person in court because of the very issue that person just brought up. Like you can't enjoin a private company and force them to rehire somebody, right? Because now you're infringing on their speech.
Sure.
If you do that,
You know, the person who asked that question, it seems a little funny and absurd even, but you know, that was the defense basically
yes,
of the Biden administration. We have a right to free speech too.
it absolutely was. That was what they argued in court,
And they won
Yeah, well,
so far.
They won. What that Supreme Court case, and people forget this, the reason they sent it back down to the courts is because they said those defendants, people like Jay Bhattacharya, Aaron Khariati, couldn't demonstrate what they called traceability, right? They couldn't prove absolutely that the action was linked all the way through to a government recommendation. The courts may or may not have liked the conduct of the government, but they couldn't prove that it led directly to this injury. So they said, go back to the lower courts, fight it out. If you can prove that, you know, we're happy
Come
to
back.
talk about it again later. Come back, right?
And we'll see in a few years.
And
All I need to know is that none of these people are going to defend Walter Kern in the future. So,
well, right,
Screw 'em.
exactly. We have moved past the moment where we'll defend anybody. And what's so weird about it is that they wouldn't
it's
even
the
do it.
celebrity enemy distinction. You get that joke.
Right, yeah, right, like right, the friend enemy distinction and celebrity enemy distinction. Yeah, exactly. And you know, these ACLU, these people who sign the ACLU thing, they wouldn't sign even when there was sort of jawboning type suppression of their own speech, or when it was the Yellow Vest movement, when it was even pro-Palestinian activists got leaned on in some of these cases, and they're you know, Roger Waters stood up, but there weren't a whole lot of people. They weren't upset about the mechanism; they were upset about the issue, right? And so that we're past the moment where people are going to argue on principle about the issue. Now, this is a key moment in American history, I think, just because it would be extremely bad. It would be kind of like an end of the world scenario speech-wise if the Trump administration were to lean wholeheartedly into the same kind of concept of full-blown speech suppression. But have they
gonna?
Right. Will they, right? Like, have they pulled back from the brink? I don't know. But let's play let's play 6 with Erica Kirk talking about the First Amendment. Because there has been a lot of pressure, and it's been it's been contradictory, but there's been enough on the Republican side that I don't think they're going to go there all the way, but we'll see.
The First Amendment of our Constitution is the most human amendment. We are naturally talking beings, naturally believing beings. And the First Amendment protects our right to do both. No assassin will ever stop us from standing up to defend those rights, ever.
Dude, the guy was killed for what he said. Even these free speech people
because when you
their
stop
hostility
the
to him on what he
conversation,
said.
when you stop the dialogue, this is what happens. When we lose the ability and the willingness to communicate, We get violence.
So, okay, so she said that, and I think that was a great speech, right? It was an important thing to say.
Well, listen, this was a religious situation. And if you watched that funeral yesterday, it was largely couched in the language and symbolism of religion and Christianity, more than a political. It was not a political rally, okay? It might be seen as de facto that by some people, but those were not the words and concepts that were used manifestly on the surface. Christians and any religious people in this country have an even deeper attachment to the First Amendment than just talkers, because it guarantees their right to worship, right?
Well, yeah, it's in the same. Yeah,
it's in the same amendment.
Yeah.
So there's crossover. It's sort of it's of double interest, of dual purpose to believers, especially if they feel that their belief might be challenged or by the state or whatever. So again, I don't see, if I'm just going to be predicting playing sports, I don't see a huge push that's going to come together from the Trump administration on the right. They'll have Erica Kirk in their face, frankly. They'll have Rand Paul in their face. They'll have Ted Cruz going, wait, doing his voices. They'll have all kinds of people who were subject to all these hate speech rules and see how dangerous they are in their face. They made some noises. Frankly, dude, look at this TikTok thing. Now, TikTok, which was going to be banned, right? And then it wasn't banned. It's going to continue to operate in the United States.
Yes. We'll see how that turns out. It may not be the most censorship-free thing in the world, but
it may or may not be.
Yeah.
But as I understand it, it is the use of the data going to China that has been stopped. The conditions of this deal don't involve the content. Now, they may end up involving it in a de facto practical way. But in other words, Trump just took something that supposedly, and he was disgusted by, and that the right was disgusted by, and it's still operating under this, and it's going to be a big payment to China. And I even had a friend who's a deep thinker and a strategist and well-connected journalist tell me that one reason you're not going to get a free speech curtailment from the right is because this TikTok deal was done with big supporters of Trump, big money people, and so on. And frankly, they don't want that to be a brouhaha right now because it would contradict what they just did with TikTok.
Well, we'll see how that works out. I haven't spent a lot of time on the TikTok deal, so I don't know a ton about it.
It makes ABC look like
right,
look like a ham radio in the back of my truck compared, in terms of influence and in terms of reach and so on.
And that's the other thing that drives me nuts about this whole thing is that, yes, it's scary to see the government, maybe bullying a news network into firing a high-profile person like Jimmy Kimmel, but it was nowhere near the bandwidth that they were contemplating with all these different bureaucracies with Twitter, Facebook, Google, right? Like, just think about some of the stuff that the reach of some of these concepts they were
algorithms that we have no insight into, that frankly the government probably doesn't either, unless it's unless there are backroom alliances that we're not told about. Just to reprise what I just said about TikTok. on the right, there are genuine national security concerns among many that Trump, just in the name of free speech, allowed TikTok to keep going. And that, in fact, he just sacrificed national security on the altar of free speech, though the cynics would say he sacrificed it on the altar of a lot of people who are going to lose tens of billions of dollars who had invested in TikTok in the United States, who have had their bacon saved. But
and I know there are other critics who think that it's about controlling certain, content on TikTok about issues like Israel and Palestine too.
Right.
So,
right. But my whole point, my overall point is that I don't see a jihad on free speech from the right or from Republicans or from MAGA. It's too complicated for them. They've actually have, as that NBC reporter properly stated, made very strong declarations. They were the victims of the last regime of censorship, probably still are in many ways.
Well,
and,
right.
And I don't see them pulling together a coalition and enough furor and passion to do this. I don't think they are going to. That's just a prediction.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I thought it was so important that they brought in censored people into the administration, like,
Right.
Tulsi, Jay Bhattacharya, RFK, right? These are all people who had gone through this ringer, pretty seriously in the last few years. And
a lot of TV people, frankly, from Fox, Jeanine Pirro, Pete Hegseth, etc. They would really have to put Humpty Dumpty together to have a concerted effort against free speech.
so the argument that they might do it, though, stems from comments like this from Donald Trump. Let's look at South 7.
In that private moment on his dying day, we find everything we need to know about who Charlie Kirk truly was. He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose. He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent. And I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica. But now Erica can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
That's why they elected Donald Trump rather than the other fakeroo people, because I believe him when he says that.
Yeah, no, he does, and the people who look, he gets very emotional and lashes out on Truth Social when he talks about things like Russiagate, and a lot of the sort of mainstream critics think it's just political threatening because they're still in this headspace where they think that story's true, right? So that's part of the problem with this. But look, as we mentioned before, like there is a conservative tradition of trying to make rules about speech, usually on decency grounds or something like that. Like that's the Jerry Falwell thing, right?
Strangely, the furthest they got was Tipper Gore.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that was another moment that birthed a lot of sort of American liberalism in the 80s.
Dude, those stickers burned their way into my mind,
Right?
I loved those stickers. They made it easy for me to choose which albums I was going to buy.
Totally. You knew right away, like, oh, NWA, that I don't know anything about that band, but I have to get this album. And yeah, but we've changed, right? So we're in this new place where celebrities don't stand up for speech they find noxious, and now it's sort of incumbent upon Republicans to police themselves so that they don't go out and use government mechanisms to stamp out speech. So far, what's happened, I think, it is relatively positive, but the situation is so fluid that we can't promise that it's not going to turn bad again in another week or two. But this is the same. This restraint, this dissent from within the party, is exactly what we did not see,
Matt. When
they were making the GEC and FTIF and all FITF and all those other agencies.
In 2017, I did a panel in September, I believe. Trump had been in office since January, and it was called "Speech in the Age of Trump." You know, Age of Trump wasn't very old yet, but already we were facing a terrible, a terrible fate. And I was there with two other journalists, and one of the journalists really wanted us to believe that we were all going to be in camps with this Donald Trump. This hysteria has been going on since almost the moment he got there. I have heard speeches about the, hoary and lofty speeches about his crackdown on journalism since the day he took office. I don't see the camps. I don't see the academic institutes that were founded under the Democrats. I actually see him as pretty powerless in this area, to be honest. They tried the tiniest brushback with jawboning and got, a level 5 hurricane in return. And they lost their own discipline and consistency and had some of their party leaders come out against them. I don't think Trump's really got much power in this area, even if he wanted it.
But you know what? That's fine. Good. I'm happy, right? If that's the outcome.
I'm just telling you that anybody who thinks that we're about to face a gray iron curtain is falling across American media, I don't think you need to worry about that. Practically, it would take a lot of effort, right? They would have to. It would be a years-long project to even get them as far down the road as the Biden administration was. That's the thing that's frustrating for me. It would take them 100 years to get down the road to the point where every corporate office and human resources center and college and everything else has policies about microaggressions and this and that, which are all speech issues. I mean, dude, anybody who's worked in one of these places knows there is no way that the kind of fear, inhibition, and self-consciousness that has been put in place through liberal regulations could ever be turned into a conservative equivalent in the next years. It's too deep. It's so thick. It's so completely ubiquitous at this point. And I mean, it's so weird that no one, that Gina Carano, I don't know what she did to get kicked off, The Mandalorian or whatever her show was. I remember what Roseanne did. She did some meme about someone in the Obama administration, Valerie Jarrett. She got kicked out. It doesn't take anything to get kicked out of a Hollywood writer's room.
Roseanne signed the thing, by the way, but go ahead, yeah.
She did?
Yeah.
Roseanne, she's old, man. She just does not frickin' stop.
Yeah, so, and it's funny, you mentioned that was one of the things that was frustrating about the original reaction to stuff like the Twitter files. Like one of the things that we heard early on was look at the composition of our company by political contribution, right? And you can see that like 98% of the people who work for this company vote one way. And I had high-ranking executives say to me things like, yeah, there were just more avenues for people to complain, and we ended up seeing that this was a problem, and we tried to deal with it internally. That came out in some of the emails, and everyone said, well, then that's not true. There's, Trump made requests. He did. He made requests. I reported that too, but they were much. It was much more prevalent on the other side, and that's not for any illogical reason. It's just a question of who staffs these companies. right? And that's why you're right.
Matt, they unpersoned Mel Gibson, and he had the excuse of being in a cop car drunk.
Did he? I don't even remember that.
What? Mel Gibson kicked out of Hollywood for saying,
that's right. That's right.
Jews
Yes.
started the wars and whatever it was that he muttered, wasted in the back of a police car. When I think anybody's mood is bad, dude, whether he will ever be allowed back in Hollywood was, he was like the Pete Rose or something of major motion picture stars. He's the biggest, sexiest man in the world, according to People magazine, like twice in a row or something. These things just went by. I guess they're going to all have Mel Gibson address them at the next ACLU party.
Wouldn't that be something? That would be great.
The jujitsu move is to say, welcome. Here's your Mel Gibson. Here's your Jay Bhattacharya t-shirt. We're all going to wear them now. Freedom. I'm so glad we finally all agree. Actually, welcome. You've come around. You're actually absoluting the absolutes. Absoluting me even. Let's all form a fucking human chain and never argue about this again.
You know what? I'll take it. If that's the outcome here. I mean,
and no cheating, no backing out. It's full speed ahead on free speech, guys.
That's right. Yeah, you can't wuss out on it again. And tell us we're wearing tinfoil hats next time we bring up this kind of stuff. But whatever, that will happen. But as long as both parties are now committed to it, in a way, I'll take it. So. All right, so that happened. One other thing we have to mention quickly before we move on to our new book, which is really super interesting. I guess former rock star Morrissey canceled an appearance because of.
He's not former to real Morrissey fans, by the way, Matt.
Yeah, to real Morrissey fans. So let's look at the Newsweek story on this one. I guess it's number 9. So he's blue skied out of essentially out of his appearances. There was an Ottawa Citizen story, but essentially he got threats. Let's look at the other one. Look at the BBC one, I guess. Somebody on Blue Sky.
Hey, has Canada backed all this free speech stuff, or are they just remaining a little bit quiet and shy in the corner as they contemplate their draconian rules?
Yeah, I haven't heard the Canadian posture on this yet. Morrissey cancels U.S. shows after death threat. Essentially he got a threat from somebody on Blue Sky and canceled I guess there were 2 shows. There was one in Massachusetts, one in Connecticut. This is the former frontman for Smiths. Yeah. And he put a statement on Instagram. In recent days, there has been a credible threat on Morrissey's life. Out of an abundance of caution, for the safety of both the artist and the band, tomorrow's engagement at the MGM Music Hall at Fenway has been canceled. So this is what you were talking about before, Walter.
And people should know Morrissey is coded by the people who do the coding conservative.
Yeah, because I think the thing that people are most upset about, he's made some comments about immigration that people don't like. He wore a Britain party pin, I guess, on a Tonight Show appearance. He once wore a Union Jack costume, which I guess codes now as right wing. But he's made some pointing comments.
Does the Who get that treatment? I remember them wearing a few Union Jacks in their time.
Even I wore them. Yeah, I mean, I was a big Who fan when I was growing up. But I guess now it codes as nationalist. I don't know. I don't pay a lot of attention to Morrissey, so I don't know how much he is or is not, conservative.
My point is simply this: that I think the ACLU and all these people who signed this thing should be in support of Morrissey as well as Jimmy Kimmel, because frankly, the bigger threat right now is Americans being scared to speak, and especially in public and in open settings. Goodbye auditoriums, goodbye outdoor park-like settings for controversy. You just ended that. And that's a much more profound change than anything having to do with Disney's pharma spokesman.
Yeah, I mean, you saw even in that Turning Point speech, the plexiglass, like, you know, I gave a speech last year behind plexiglass. Like, it's, you can't have a high profile appearance anymore.
Matt, when we went to the Rescue the Republic rally in Washington in October, I believe, of last year, September or October, I was standing backstage because RFK was going to speak. And I met a doctor backstage. I won't use his name. And I said, "What are you doing here? Are you going to speak?" He said, "No, I'm here in case RFK gets shot. I will go with him to the hospital and oversee the surgical procedures to make sure they're best practices. That's why I'm here." Because he doesn't have he doesn't have Secret Service. So I'm part of the security detail. And I went, oh my gosh, that's what these people face. That's the reality of this thing. It's not all a party in Beverly Hills.
I mean, it isn't. It's now become a life and death thing that has entered our minds in the same way. In the same way that being removed from the internet became a consideration for people, or losing your job, or being canceled. That started to enter people's minds in a new way, like in the mid 2010s, really accelerated, you know, after 2016, 2020, it was probably at the peak of like people being freaked out about what they're going to say. And it changed our thought processes about, you know, about speech in general. Now there's a new thing. There's this new angle about appearing in public, about what you say, right? Like how inciting is, are you afraid that you're inciting the wrong kind of person?
A few weeks ago, I agreed to appear on stage with a major podcaster in November. I don't think it's been publicly announced, so I won't now. A large event. Couple of days after this happened to Kirk, I was contacted by that organization and said, "Do you want to back out?" And I was also assured that major security was going to be put in place. That's reality.
Yeah, and that's really scary, right? We're in a place that's it's becoming more and more like a religious holy war type of environment, where you have two completely different sets of facts, and people have become radicalized in a new way. But I just, you know, that threat of violence, there's something about it you know, I'm always reluctant to say this, but on the left side, there's something about it that is.
See, the whole legal reasoning behind the hate speech stuff was that it constituted a form of intimidation, and intimidation, not the whole legal reasoning, but part of it.
Yeah.
What was that when people feel intimidated, they shut up. And so you're denying their civil rights in a way by speaking about them in certain ways. I guess that's all just gone out the window, because this is intimidation par excellence. And, you know, one last thing about the Charlie Kirk thing that I think we skipped past, because just yesterday there were hundreds of thousands of people in Phoenix, and there was this basically a state funeral, except 2025 style, in a freaking stadium, with everyone really who matters in the administration at the thing, from the vice president to the secretary of energy, you know, and all these media people and so on. I mean, it was an event actually if we really want to think about, that is unprecedented, because it combined media, it combined religion, and it combined politics, and it combined the great unwashed, the people themselves, just the people who listen, all mixed together in one event, which doesn't happen a lot. And the fact is that concentration of power, numbers, media, new media savvy, and so on, will be far more influential than anything you and I are talking about, because every one of those people had a phone, and everybody broadcast their participation in it, and everybody was at an event far more moving than watching an episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live, and they went back to their communities. So if you want my practical real world prediction about the free speech and just general state of expression in America, what happened yesterday will influence it far more than any of this.
Well, let's hope that's true, and let's hope, you know, there may even be a few genuine converts on the speech front on the other side who now see the possibility, but I don't know. I feel like it's mostly just hypocrites, but I'll take it. So let's end on a positive note. You know, I don't know how much positivity one can take out of the events of the last few weeks, but it could have been worse. What's happened in the last week or so, and it hasn't gotten there yet. So, and you know, let's hope that people have learned some things, and that maybe, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if people take a turn or not. Anyway, we have a new book. Yeah. It's The Fall by Albert Camus, and I had never read this book before.
You finished it already?
No, I haven't finished it yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, but I'm fairly well into it at this point. It's not that long.
No. And our audience, I can tell you, I want you to catch up with us. In this case, I feel it's really important that you catch up with us. This is a major work of 20th century, philosophical and literary thought, and it's short, and you can listen to it because it's in the form of a monologue by a guy sitting in a bar. So I think it's very appropriate that you might listen to it rather than read it if that's your style. And finally, it costs 99 cents if you want to get it on Apple Books or something like that. So you got no excuses, and we can have a great conversation, because this is one of the most subtle and I think mysterious works of literature at this level that you will ever encounter.
Definitely. I had never read it. And he's obviously he's known for other books. Mm-hmm. His name came up a lot at the beginning of the pandemic, obviously because of the plague. Yeah. But this book is fascinating at this moment. Well, Walter, do you want to just give a little summary briefly, or even like an introduction to it? Because when I started reading it at first, I was like, yeah, I don't know. And then very quickly it turned into something that felt like it was speaking. It was similar to the C.S. Lewis thing, where suddenly I felt like, wow, this is speaking directly to something that's going on right now. So walk us through what this book is about.
First of all, who is Albert Camus? Just briefly, you have to know, because his work and his life are so entwined. He was a most notably resistor to the Nazi occupation of France, and he published newspapers almost every day at the risk of his life. At the risk of his life, if he was found out during the occupation of Paris and France. He's a hero of speech at a level that I don't think we can even touch in America, because we haven't been occupied by a foreign power. I mean, if I was down there every day publishing columns that were hostile to an occupying army, then I might have a right to even, breathe in the same room as Camus, but I don't. Anyway, after that, he, as a young literary star, and he wasn't that old, he'd written The Stranger, which was and he's called an existentialist, and he'd written The Plague, which sort of was about the valiant action that is doomed, but we must perform despite that, over and over, the kind of Pyrrhic victories that we win every day only to face defeat, but can't give up.
Yeah, it's kind of a flip side of absurdism thing that
right.
It's
well,
not
it
my
was
favorite.
absurdism.
It's absurdism, but it's not my favorite view on absurdism. Like,
right.
My favorite view on absurdism is life is ridiculous, but it's awesome anyway. And his is sort of more, it's pointless, but let's do it anyway.
Right.
It's a different kind of absurdism for me. But
you're gonna lose.
Yeah.
You're gonna lose. You're gonna exhaust yourself in the service of a bunch of principles that really don't exist in any transcendent way. And you got to do it just to be, tough. Now, Camus dressed like Humphrey Bogart on purpose. He loved the aesthetic of American film noir. You'll see him with the galois and the overcoat. He was a tough guy. He was a former soccer player. He was partly Moroccan. He came from a country that France oppressed as a colonial power. And he also stood up for them as he stood up for France against the Nazi occupation. Anyway, his last book in 1956, his last novel was The Fall. And it takes this form. There's a man in a bar in Amsterdam on a cold autumn night, and it takes place in the fall, which is one of the reasons I chose it. It's a double meaning: the fall of man and the fall. And the fall. Yes.
Yeah, it's sort of like the importance of being earnest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's this mystery man sitting at a bar called Mexico City in Amsterdam on a foggy night, and a stranger sits down to him, and this book takes the form of a series of monologues that he gives to this stranger who never speaks for himself. Okay, we don't know who his audience for these series of monologues is, and he's a very cultivated man, and he's a former lawyer from Paris, and he lives now in the Jewish quarter. This is a big part of it in Amsterdam, where he says our Hitlerian brethren sure did a cleanup job.
Yeah, the vacuum cleaning line, but I'll find it. But go ahead. Mm-hmm.
So it's situated in the shadow of the Holocaust, and there's a very sardonic, self-hating, but also grandiose quality to this speech. It's a very complicated tone, and what the tone really is, finally, is a question that I think we'll have to answer in a future. Is he bitter? Is he self-loathing? Is he self-pitying? Is he in fact still grandiose in that he's kind of like the ancient mariner, just insisting that this person listen to him? And the story he tells is really just that of a bourgeois lawyer who he's a big liberal. That's also the important thing to understand.
Yep.
A big liberal. He loves helping old ladies across the street, blind people. He'll look around when he was back in Paris and see a blind person trying to come across the street and run up. He is a virtue signaler par excellence. And the subtitle of this book could be Confessions of a Virtue Signaler.
Absolutely, and it should be that. There's a line that perfectly describes what you're talking about. I revealed myself to be both a tireless dancer and an unobtrusively learned man. I managed to love simultaneously, and this is not easy. Women and justice. So in other words, he's a virtue signaler. He's for all the right things, but he manages to be like a womanizer anyway.
Well, and Matt, you sent me, what's the great line that you sent me? What will be the epitaph of 20th century man?
Hang on a second, I'll find it. It's about fornicating, but keep going though.
He read the newspapers and he fornicated.
He read the newspapers and that's right.
So it's about being addicted to the news too, and basically,
it always seemed to me that our fellow citizens had two passions: ideas and fornication. But anyway,
right? Yeah, exactly. And is that not still true? What do they use the internet for? News and porn. you know,
Right.
but anyway, he also was a pro bono lawyer. He said I had a special weakness for noble cases, you know, but he's also a cad. And those are the two most salient elements of his personality. He loved and discarded women. He played them off against each other. And if any of you need a kind of sinful reason to read this book, let me give you something. I used to know in Malibu an author who was famous for his name was Neil Strauss. He wrote for Rolling Stone at one time for his books called The Game, which are the pickup artist books.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he said the most condensed and lapidary version of the pickup artist philosophy is in The Fall. A couple of paragraphs. He said, I needn't have written all those books because it's all in The Fall. And he named a page for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which one? You have
pickup
to
artists wanting to save money, you're going to get to a part in The Fall, or about halfway, 2/3 of the way through, where the entire secret of seduction is going to be. And Camus in real life was an epic seducer.
Yeah, it seems like that's a part of his French personality that he likes to accentuate.
His wife committed suicide over it.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. I didn't know.
I mean, they lived back then pretty intense lives, and this is the record of one.
Well, I mean, I guess that gets to the other question about what this book is about, because I again, having not read all the way through, the setup is he's in a bar, oddly enough, called Mexico City in Amsterdam, which he compares sort of a hellscape, like a labyrinth.
Yes.
Hellscape, because of all the canal systems and everything. And he's describing how he used to have this amazing life as a well-known French lawyer, where everybody revered him and loved him and thought of him as a virtuous beacon of rectitude and everything. But somehow he's ended up at the end of his life, essentially in like the red light district of Amsterdam, babbling to some unknown person. And that's the other fall in this book. He has fallen somehow, right? Well, why did he fall, right? Like what happened to him? And I don't know, because I'm not that far into the book yet, but it feels like he is going to move and describe a progression of his personality from this grandiose narcissist who is sort of harmlessly narcissistic, if one can say that, into something much darker. And that's my guess. That's where it feels like it's going. But it's about a kind of intellectual pomposity gone wrong.
Well, that, yes, but also a pose of public virtue versus private behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And not to, this isn't a spoiler. The story that he wants to tell, and it's only about 100 pages long, rather quickly becomes the story of one night in his life. We're about, just as Catch-22 is this huge novel that circles the incident in this inside this plane. This circles one night when he was walking home alone, and he had a choice to make. And for all his public, he's AOC on the outside. He's Gavin Newsom on the outside. He's a man. He's a dashing, seducing man of virtue on the outside. But one night, when nobody was watching, he had a decision to make.
Okay. All right.
And
so
in that
moment. All right.
And in that sense, it also speaks to the Holocaust and to World War II, because it has to do with the difference between appearances. I mean, the Nazis too were very, especially the officials, very cultured people. And Hannah Arendt, the chronicler of the Nuremberg trials and the philosopher who came up with the words banality of evil, would have found this book interesting and relevant too, and I'm sure she did. I mean, they were part of the same circles. This is Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, Hannah Arendt, all these philosophers, and this is in the wake of the Nuremberg trials. So, in the wake of the Nuremberg trials, if you're a liberal, and especially if you stood up to the Nazis in the French Resistance, you have a right to think of yourself as pretty special. You won. You came out on top. You preserved civilization. All those awful people who killed those Jews, all the awful people who invaded those little countries and, subjected them to horror. So in other words, Albert Camus and this liberal lawyer should be at the very peak of their prestige in terms of guardians of civilization. But we're going to find this guy has a secret.
Well, I was going to say, isn't the next order question, though, after Nuremberg, like, how does this happen? Right? Like,
and he explains how it happens.
That's where it feels like it's going to me, right? So there's all these signals, where he keeps telling you how good he is. There's a line in there, I was a real tornado. My heart was on my sleeve. You would have thought that justice slept with me every night, right? And he does this all the time. Like he keeps describing how virtuous he was in these very witty ways. Like I think in a way that's different from his other books. There's a lot of sort of punchy one-liner-y kind of writing in this, and he's mocking himself in this sort of steadily building way early on. But it feels like what it's going to be is this indictment of the veneer of civilization, and this idea that, because he talks incessantly about how he always occupied the lofty places, right? And he's always high up, and that's where he feels comfortable. And
in the symbolism of the book, he's now living below sea level in Amsterdam, in a city that has to have dikes to keep from flooding. But before, he always loved being atop a mountain, a ski hill, an office in a tall building. It is Confessions of a Virtue Signaler. And the reason I think it's so wonderful is that Americans, Camus was a real hero. He was a real hero. He stood up to the Nazis, as I said. He, won the Nobel Prize at a young age for these really sort of searing philosophical books about fighting the good fight in a world that doesn't care. But this is the book in which he is wise to himself.
And there's a kind of despair that I feel in it. I don't know that it's actually going to go that way, but I feel in the prose that he's moving us towards this conclusion that's sort of like, this is inevitable. You can't avoid this, right? And or I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, it's also a book that's part of an argument that he was having with Sartre. And what you need to know about Sartre was Sartre became a real strong Marxist who basically believed that the ends justify the means in an extreme way. I mean, he would have defended and probably did terrorism. He was obviously on the side of the, North Vietnamese and the, Viet Cong and the Vietnam War. He was as left gets, really, philosophically and in his life. And Camus and he basically, though they both were joining forces against the Nazis, had a falling out afterwards, because Camus came to believe that you could not justify present horrifying actions in the name of a future utopia that might never come. He was a moralist, whereas Sartre was almost a kind of like, he was a moralist too, but a kind of hardcore utilitarian who believed that almost anything was justified if you were making progress toward this just society.
Yeah, and maybe that's why I always had a negative reaction to Sartre books, but Camus feels like a very different kind of thinker to me. Sort of self-questioning, witty, full of feeling. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on early on in this book. This is not someone that you who's a one-note thinker or anything like that. Even though it's a monologue, which is a very tough thing. I don't know. Have you ever written something like that where it's just one person?
So it's a monologue. It's kind of like Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground.
Yeah, or Diary of a Madman.
Diary of a Madman. And I'll just say it here. I have thought many times of trying to rewrite this novel in some way. With a new situation, a new kind of monologue, a new kind of character, because I've probably read this book 20 times. I'm just parading my obsession and indulging my obsession with it. I really want to see what it's like for people who haven't read it.
What fascinated you? But you can't tell me.
The mood and the complexity of the confession, because it is at the end a statement almost about all of us. It truly reaches universal proportions in my mind, though it starts with a very eccentric kind of confession, and it opens out, and it does it in such a short time, and it does it in the wake of such shattering world historical events of which Camus was a part, that it just seems like a diamond that was forged in this massive cyclotron of pressures and
I was going to say of stress and
stresses. And it's also so damn honest about men and women.
Oh, well, I haven't gotten to that yet, but yeah, that should be interesting. It's funny. You mentioned Notes from the Underground and Diary of a Madman. That's one of the reasons why in the first few pages of this, I'm obviously one of the biggest Gogol fans in the world, but I didn't love Diary of a Madman. I thought that format I think it's very difficult, right? Like the apostrophic style where, it's almost like like a second person kind of writing, very difficult. And it's too easy to be gimmicky, like to create sort of an anti-hero who rambles and has quirky traits, but that's not what happens in this book. It very quickly, it's not like you're standing back and watching somebody talk like a crazy person talk to himself. It very quickly becomes something where he's talking to you, and he finds something to grab onto and with you in the audience, and I just find it really compelling early on. Like that dialogue, it's just really interesting the way he wrote it, and the character is really fascinating. And
he poses a question very early on. There's a kind of brutal, grunting bartender who never talks, who the narrator compares to an ape, and he asks a question very early: have we progressed past the apes? Because at least they don't pretend to be something they aren't. We do. And what price have we paid for that? And in a way, have we become more brutal because of that posturing? Would it be better perhaps to just still be in the cave, knuckle dragging, than pretending to be virtuous while tens of thousands die or millions? But you said that the prescript is from Lermontov, a Russian writer that you admire, who I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, there's a quote at the beginning from a book called A Hero of Our Time. Russian, it's Geroy Nash of Vremny. And it's one of those books that we talked about with duels. It's 5 short stories about this character, and Lermontov was a young writer who died at a young age of a duel, not unlike Pushkin, but just very, very passionate, alive short stories that are very affecting to young people, right? It's a book,
but also about someone kind of in despair, right?
Yes, who sort of can't escape the darkness around them. And the quote is in there. Some were dreadfully insulted and quite seriously to have held up as a model such an immoral character as a hero of our time. Others shrewdly noticed that the author had portrayed himself and his acquaintances. A hero of our time, gentlemen, is in fact a portrait, but not of an individual. It is the aggregate of the vices of our whole generation in their fullest expression. So this was a book about, like, that book was about one character who sort of inexorably moves towards self-destruction, and maybe that's what he's talking about with this monograph at the beginning. But I thought it was really interesting that he quoted Lermontov. I'd never seen anybody like a Western writer do that. So
and there's a concept that I want to put into people's heads. You know, you hear it all the time if you study English or literature. But I don't know how familiar the public is with the Byronic hero.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
And now Lermontov's hero, I haven't read the book. I cheated. I read some cliff notes about it. It was considered a version of the Byronic hero.
Totally.
The Byronic hero is somebody like a little bit like John F. Kennedy if he'd had more doubts or something, or public doubts. Like they're handsome, they're brave publicly, they're crusading, but they're also sensualists who feel doomed and pluck the fruit for today, and take as much pleasure as they can in this, in this tragic world. But they also inspire others while they're themselves in despair, and they kind of wear nice clothes.
Right. Yeah, they're stylish. Exactly. Yeah. So the Lermontov book is exactly that. It's 100% that. Another person, Eugene Onegin, the Pushkin verse novel, very similar character, except he's not inspiring. He's more of a cad than that character. But yeah, the definitely a Byronic hero. Is this character a Byronic hero though? I don't know.
I think we find out that
he's a fraud.
The reduced version that we're meeting in the bar might not be, but the guy who is swanning around Paris, seducing people and taking up noble pro bono cases, and speaking, at assemblies of virtuous people was.
Gotcha. Well, I can't wait to get into it. I mean, as Walter said, it's not that long of a book, so if you haven't gotten one, go grab it. It's easily found online too. So, The Fall by Albert Camus. And Walter, thanks for coming out. Thank you everybody for watching us today, and we will see you again later this week.
See you then.